Recording.
Yeah.
Oh, no special entrance?
Yeah, I know. I was thinking, but I was like, I'm not in a good position. Welcome to another Rust WebAssembly Working Group meeting. I'm made for radio. So today I wanted to do a slightly different meeting because we just finished the last 6-week sprint, and today is the release of the release candidate 2 for the 2018 Rust edition. So I wanted to first reflect a little bit on how the last 6 weeks went, and then just spend the rest of the time planning for the next 6-week sprint. So how do we think we did? How was the last 6 weeks? Did we try to do too much, too little?
I feel like I was gone the whole time, so I feel bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess from the Wasm-pack side, I'll say that a lot of stuff got done when I was gone, which I thought was super amazing. So there should be like claps for still moving that forward, even though I disappeared into a Rust conf hole and then went on vacation.
As far as like the Wasm-bindgen and WebSys area, like I was very skeptical at the start that we were going to be able to do all of the things that we set out. And basically everything's done. Like we haven't actually published WebSys yet, which is like the last big remaining thing. But like I think we're at a point right now where we could publish it, and like we just want to double check first. So I don't know. I'm really surprised, like in a happy, nice way. So like thanks to all of us here who helped make that happen. Like, yeah.
Yes, it's very good that it's finally usable.
Yeah, like it actually like works most of the time. It's a little scary.
I also think that over the last 6 weeks, there's been a lot of really good documentation work that's happened, and I mostly just want to say good job, FitzGen, on that, because it's pretty much a heroic effort by basically just you. So seriously, thank you. Let's focus on trying to grow that team so you can do other things.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I'm happy to do it. I think it was really nice at RustConf. I forget his name, but he told me that like basically he stuck with hacking on Wasm-bindgen projects because there was documentation, and like how much he appreciated that. Thank you.
Yeah, that Wasm-bindgen guide is friggin' awesome. It's really good.
Any thoughts about the rest of the project? And the last 6 weeks?
One thing I wanted to say is that I feel like with Rust, I'm like constantly overwhelmed with the 2018 edition, but with Wasm, at least I wasn't. So I felt like it was a good amount. It was a good amount of like stuff getting done, but not like an overwhelming mountain of things that need to get done. So that was kind of nice.
Okay, cool. Should we dive into planning for the next 6 weeks? Yeah.
Yeah,
right, so
just to clarify, this is going to be the 6 weeks. Where does 6 weeks put us in the edition rollout? Because
this is release candidate 2.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's 6 weeks from today, release candidate 2 ships, and then 6 weeks from that is the whole thing, the big deal.
Right, that makes sense. And that's like mid-December.
Yeah, mid-early December, if I remember correctly.
So the beta that's being produced, not today but soon, is the edition, and that will be in beta for 2 cycles until early December. And so the next cycle technically ends in late October, but so we have 2 more 6-week cycles of polish before the edition actually hits stable.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
And like again, we've since had all of our stuff pretty much in, shipping and riding the Rust release trains. But what so we're not as affected by like deadlines, but what will happen is there's going to be a lot of marketing and attention, and like we have a very big prominent place on the new website that's going to roll out with the edition and everything. So as far as like users come, I think we're going to see a huge uptick when that happens.
I'll
Yeah.
say as well, October is the first date that Wasm-bindgen will be executing on stable. And so that might be in terms of planning, that's a good milestone for us, like on stable Rust, not the edition, but stable Rust. We can do everything on stable and have like all the tooling ready to go and all that.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So that actually, like, I guess like jumping ahead a little bit, but that's something I would like to nominate for a goal for this 6-week cycle is like figuring out a story for how to manage which Rust is required for Wasm-bindgen and implementing that. Does that sound reasonable to everyone?
So the one thing maybe I'm not entirely understanding what you're saying, but I know that there's an outstanding issue that I think Alex filed maybe on Wasm-pack, where we are like forcing nightly on everyone in like every possible way. And I think we need to, especially in order to be able to like let people who want to use beta, which should be more with the whole edition being on it, which because usually no one uses beta in my experience. But we need to pull all of that out and then make sure that like how Wasm-pack handles your tool chain, and I guess also with Wasm-bindgen, how that handles your tool chain is something we can actually support. Because I don't think it'll be hard, but I don't necessarily think it will be trivial.
Yeah, so that's exactly like what I was trying to get at.
Okay.
And again, I think this is the case with like a lot of Wasm-pack stuff is like implementations are not usually like that hard, but like figuring out the right place in the design space is like there's a lot of trade-offs to be made there, and it really benefits from like forethought and upfront design work.
Totally. Can I share my screen to just show one thing that's kind of off topic, but should talk about all the amazing work we did in the last 6 weeks? All right, so I was talking with my manager on the WebAssembly side at Mozilla today named Till, and we were talking about how to gauge whether or not we're successful, and you were just talking about getting more users with the edition push. And I just wanted to share that I don't know what happened at the beginning of September, but this is Wasm-bindgen, and this is Wasm-pack, and something happened where tons of people suddenly started using it at the beginning of September. Which is really cool. I don't know what happened, but I think it's worth at least noting that like we're hitting at least some sort of inflection point where people are really starting to pick this stuff up, which is great. Anyways, that was the one thing I wanted to be like, look, like literally September, it was just like the let's go time.
Yeah, I wonder if we can like look at blog posts or like events or something and see if we can correlate with that.
Yeah, I also have been vaguely thinking about putting an RFC up for Wasm-pack having a custom key in its package JSON so that we can keep tabs on how many Wasm-pack published packages are in the NPM registry.
Definitely.
Might be fun.
All right. So why don't we just go through each of these repos that are listed out in the agenda one by one and just like discuss what we think would be good for the next 6 weeks. So Wasm-bindgen. I think we all agree that like actually publishing WebSys is still a goal that should carry over. Do you have any other thoughts, Alex or AFDW?
Yeah, other than that, I would actually say like we should not wind down, but like primarily focus on like polish and documentation as opposed to anything. I don't think there's any like major features we need to be adding or any new like big things we need to support. So a lot more focus. Like if anyone has any questions ever, any more examples we can add. Like I think Fitchton, you had the idea this morning of like we should publish live examples of everything, and like we should totally be doing that. And so that kind of polish as opposed to like feature work or anything like that sounds good. But and so that's
Okay.
it's. I would say it's a pretty minor aspect of the next 6 weeks where like we should have it in the back of our minds, but I don't think we need to focus a lot of effort per se on it.
After the publishing of VPCs, should we start keeping compatibility with older versions?
We should be thinking about it. I don't think we can't make breaking changes, but like we should definitely be aware of breaking changes and make them intentionally.
I've kind of assumed that we, at the bare minimum, will start an issue for breaking changes we want to make, and I'm sure we'll start populating it pretty soon, and then we'll try and batch those up. So not have them all go out all at once, but if we have something that's like a minor breaking change and it doesn't really break anyone in practice, we can probably publish that at any time.
Yeah, like I think there's also a couple like Moz prefix things that like shouldn't be exposed that we've kind of entrenched in the WebIDL, and like that would technically be a breaking change to remove it, but like it wouldn't actually work if anyone was trying to use it anyway. And so like that's the kind of thing where like I think we could make something that's technically a breaking change as a not breaking version bug.
Yeah.
Right.
That being said, I think with Alex talking about doing polish, like maybe we should start auditing and finding those things and just removing their exposure, because
Yeah.
people will find a way to successfully use what you thought was a broken, just like nothing thing. They'll figure it out, and then you really will break them. So.
Because there are many JS values in types, generic JS values, not complete types, because it's not yet done. Dictionaries for variety arguments, for callbacks, and such.
I'm not sure if I caught all of that. Did someone else catch that?
So you were saying like how we're erasing generics, like callbacks and promises and things don't have generics, and how that's a problem?
I mean that if we'll try to add them later, it can be a breaking change.
I missed that one too, sorry.
If what happens, it's a breaking change?
If we'll try to add generics, not types, not using that much JS values.
Right. If we make types more specific, or we add a new wrapper for promise that keeps track of the generic type that it's going to result in, that's a breaking change. Yeah, I think those. So certainly the way that we translate types is something we have to keep an eye on for breaking changes, and those specific things where we are introducing like generics or something like that. I think we just need to have more usage experience before we decide if that's even something we want to pursue. Because on one hand, like that does seem like it would be a nicer interface. On the other, our primary goal is to enable usage of the APIs and kind of be like a libc like system library to enable other people to build higher level APIs. And so there's like a balance there, and I think we just don't have like the usage to inform that decision yet.
Yeah, and I would say at least with this like timeline, I think we're aiming for Wasm-pack to 1.0 by the edition, but I don't think that we want Wasm-bindgen to 1.0 ever, or at least anytime soon, because the goal is to get people, like get a large number of people using the toolchain, so we feel like we have enough feedback to be able to make these decisions, which I'm not sure that we have at the moment.
Yeah. But speaking of translation of types, I do think it is worthwhile before we publish to do another audit of all of the unsupported logs and figure out like how often different things are being hit, and then also try and get a sense for like, okay, so certain things are unsupported, like which APIs is that affecting? Because it might end up being like a very small count of APIs that are affected by a particular unsupported feature that ends up being a really important API. Like, for example, this setting the body of a fetch request thing. That seems pretty important. That's a pretty fundamental API on the web. And even though it's like by the numbers, it doesn't show up a lot in our vast web IDL, it still seems pretty important. So I'm going to actually add that as well. And also, I guess I'm just going to say we should probably support that body thing before shipping. So I'll put that.
The problem with it was that it's nullable type, and we are not currently supporting nullable unions. I have implemented that support using JS values, but Alex said that it won't be good for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, that was primarily just kind of to be conservative. I think this, I preferred, for me, I preferred to have the use case in front of us so we could like add some tests and see what's going on there. And so for something like this, I suspect we will just use JS values, or we are going to do like something like easily add option of object or things like that. So I think we'll definitely get it done. I just wanted to kind of make sure we progress not at too fast of a pace and make too many decisions by accident.
Yeah, I think moving forward, probably JS value is the best thing to do here because it's kind of implicitly nullable in that it can be null or undefined. And like once the types start getting like a little bit too complicated, like I think there's diminishing returns in trying to explicitly type it in Rust. Especially since this is, at least for something like this, where you're putting it into a member, you can just like anything can just like turn into a JS value. And yeah. Anything else about Wasm-bindgen?
One thing that might be nice, especially if the idea is for like polish and just kind of like slowing down. I haven't looked at the code base in a second, but maybe we want to encourage like some refactorings to like clean up some stuff. Just like, I don't know if we're still doing like TypeScript generation right next to the JS, or like, I don't know. It might be a nice opportunity to make some calls for like cleaning up the code base and adding tests and stuff. I don't know.
Do you have anything in mind, or?
I'm thinking a little bit about, and I would have to go check and see if this is still the case, but like when we generate, like the bodies of functions tend to have like make the JS and make the TypeScript like right next to each other, and it just makes the function bodies really long. And I feel like there's a way to like kind of refactor that out nicely to make it like, this is the TypeScript and this is the JavaScript and that kind of stuff. I have to go back in, but I'm also just thinking like, and I'm thinking about this because one of the goals that I have, at least for Rust next year, is to try and slow down and do polish. It's something that Rust has tried to do a lot of and like seems to not be very good at. But one thing I think we have caught on to is that if you don't want people to do feature work, you have to give them something else to do. Or they will add features. So like coming up with like just saying like, let's do cleanup work, like similar with feature stuff, it can help to like file issues with like specific types of polish work you want people to do. Because otherwise adding code and adding features is like the default mindset.
Another thing, if we want to implement better support for unions, actually generating Rust enumerations, we probably want to change how the Wasm API looks like, because currently Rust doesn't have a stable API for WebAssembly and generating complex types can be a bit of a problem. So, is it possible to replace Wasm API by something else that we can control in Wasm-bindgen?
When you're talking about the Wasm ABI, are you talking about Wasm-bindgen's like into and from ABI, et cetera, traits? Or are you talking about like the actual like F32, F64, I32, I64 stuff?
I mean the Wasm API trait. Currently, for passing, for example, I64 type, we pass a struct that contains two fields. That are 32 bits, right? So, is it possible to instead generate something like a struct that counts types? For example, this ABI has 4 I32 and 1 F64. So that we can reuse fields and have more control over it.
It might be possible to do these things, but actually that's a good point. We don't want to get too far in the weeds here, and so this might be a good discussion to take offline onto the Wasm-bindgen repo itself.
I think.
Go ahead.
I think I will need to write it in text so that you can better understand, because it's hard to say.
I did remember one thing related to Wasm-bindgen et al. That I'd like to ship in the next 6 weeks is I'd like to have JSSys completely finished. We're down to like 7 remaining methods or something. And like I would love to just have all those checkboxes checked off and be able to like close that issue. And related to that, there's one other issue about iterators in JS. So like basically iterators in JS are very duck typey, and it's like as long as you have you know, the @iterator method, then you can return iterators, and anything can potentially have that. And so there's an issue on file for like allowing any JS value to fallibly be turned into a JS iterator. And that's another thing that I think we should have, because a lot of people have asked, like, how do you iterate over blah, blah, blah. So we should probably also have a section in the guide about that. All right. And I think we can move on to Wasm-pack stuff now. Yeah?
Works for me. So I guess the big picture thing here to know is that we ideally want a 1.0 of Wasm-pack by the end of the next 2 cycles. So assuming we want like a polish cycle, then like these next 6 weeks are like the big deal for us. So There's a couple of things that I definitely want to see happen. The first one is we have the RFC for expressing NPM dependencies. And so this actually is going to be some work in Wasm-bindgen too, though not too much, at least as far as I can tell. I think a lot of it is already there. Yeah, so finish the NPM deps RFC and then implement it would be the number one priority thing I think we want. But additionally, I think, and we've been kicking this down the line for so long, but really spearhead some work on what a config file looks like for Wasm-pack so that we can finally get Wasm-snip and Wasm-op support in there. There's like a lot of work that has been done, but I think there's like some product work that just needs to be done on that config file. And so I would really like to see that land. And so assuming that we can get the config file, Wasm-opt and Wasm-snip support, and then the NPM dependencies, that's a whole bunch of stuff right there. And so maybe that's what we aim for what a 1. I'm trying to think of what does a 1.0 on Wasm-pack require that's not those things. What are the things that I'm leaving out?
The in-flight work to handle Wasm-bindgen versions from cargo lock.
Oh, yeah. I guess I meant what's not already in flight. Sorry.
Yeah.
The things in flight we should absolutely land, which is the Wasm-pack test should happen today, and then the lock file work from DataPub, which now has an open PR, which is good.
Oh, awesome. I didn't see that.
Yeah, I think it happened this morning.
Cool.
Or last night, I don't know. I saw it first thing when I woke up.
The other thing that I think maybe is worth like having a conversation around, and like we don't necessarily need to change anything here, but like I think it's worth like asking the question and exploring the designs a little bit, is what to do with like local installs of binaries. So right now we throw them like essentially just by happenstance, the way that the PR was implemented and without like thinking about it too hard. We throw local installs into crate/bin/whatever the binary's name is. So like a local Wasm-bindgen is crate bin Wasm-bindgen.
Yeah.
And like that's nice because it means like every crate gets its own copy, and so you know it's the exact right version, et cetera, which is like definitely one of the invariants that we want to maintain. But like if a bunch of library or a bunch of projects are all using Wasm-bindgen 0.2.15, for example, they'll each have their own copy of the binary. And like, does it make sense to have like homedir /.wasm-pack / like, you know, a deduplicated set of binaries?
Yeah, it's definitely complicated. One thing that I like about us putting it in the local crate is that we are not mutating anything globally, which is kind of nice. And I know that some people who've wanted to use Wasm-pack particularly in like a programmatic way like that.
Yeah. And we don't have to worry about things like file locks or directory locks or anything like that.
Yeah. So I think this is vaguely related, but this is something that I realize we really need to pay attention to for a 1.0, which is workspace support. Because this is like vaguely related to that. Like I could see like running this on a workspace, if it worked and did that, would really be a bummer. So I think taking a look at workspace stuff would be good. And I think that potentially a better solution falls out of that. One thing that I do like that like doesn't excuse that maybe like I'm not trying to say we shouldn't change it, but if people do want to share one, they can run in no installs mode and just install it on their own in a shared place. Like installing it on your own makes it a shared place, so then you can just do it and you just have to run the install on your own. So yeah, like there is at least an escape valve where like you can make it work if you want to. Not that that's like the best. I don't want to like tell people that they have to go do that. But yeah, we should think about it.
But
I mean, it might be nice to try and set up, not for this round, but maybe next round, like sit down with people who've like never used it before or something, or even people who use it, and just like find out what pain points are in their workflows and stuff. Which I think this could, like, sitting down with people and seeing how many people like run into this problem and like what are their thoughts for solutions could be really enlightening.
I guess I can say from my perspective, that was, I mean, this is something that for me, like with managing pre-compiled binaries, like I would personally consider it a must-have that we have to globally manage it as opposed to per project manage it, in the sense that it will be more work in Wasm-pack, like global locks and dealing with all that kind of stuff, but it's not like it has, like, it is surmountable. And the user experience, I feel, is much better. You don't have to add git ignores to your project. You don't have to re-download everything across things, and like it's something that I personally regret not doing this in Cargo, having like a more global crate cache right out the gate as opposed to trying to retroactively add it. So at least that would be my opinion on that this particular issue. But we can also take this all to issues on Git.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing for me is just if we can globally manage multiple different versions of the same crate, I'm down for it. Making your global version of Wasm-bindgen change every time doesn't seem viable, and like was kind of what we were doing originally, and a lot of people really didn't like that.
Yeah. Like, I guess what I was imagining when I said like home directory /wasm-pack /whatever would be, there would be like /wasm-pack /wasm-bindgen /0.2.15 and then the binary. And then that way you could have multiple installs next to each other, and we just manipulate the path or invoke whichever binary was appropriate.
Cool.
But
Okay, I'm super on that team. It was just that, like, yeah, changing your global stuff made people real. It was frustrating, especially when things were breaking a lot between different Wasm-bindgen versions. People were like, I hate this. I was like, that's fair.
Yeah. So I'm going to put down an item to like take this whole discussion to an issue and like come to consensus on something.
Yeah, that sounds great.
That consensus could be like not worth it, but like we should actively decide. And
I definitely prefer the global multiple versions thing for sure. It's nicer.
All right. Do we have other Wasm-pack stuff? Do we want to continue to the book?
So one thing that I want to mention is the installation experience. I have been an issue for this pretty recently, but I've been, as we become more ambitious with Wasm-pack, I think it makes sense for us to pick up dependencies like probably literally bundling binary inside of Wasm-pack, so you don't have to install anything, we don't have to do things like that. But or like today we're like pulling in curl, and like, but curl has a C dependency, which makes it really difficult to build. It takes a long time to build, and so like basically as we get more ambitious with Wasm-pack, and which I think we definitely should, it becomes harder to build Wasm-pack, especially for newbies. It's like the canonical example that I've always thought of this is like I am a Windows user who's just trying out Rust for the first time, and like Rust up is going to be great there, but if Wasm-pack stops me because I have my C compiler not fully configured, or like I forgot to install something, like it's a pretty crappy experience. And so,
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought up that C dependency in curl. That feels, yeah, we should fix that.
I guess the issue that I opened up, which was basically precompiled installers. So having a story for having a precompiled Wasm-pack that we ship to people, where it's trivial for us to set up all the CI, like we can deal with it. And developers Webpack, it's going to be kind of difficult because like they'll have to still deal with this kind of stuff. But I suspect that's kind of mostly okay. And so for the addition, like if we do agree that this is something we want long term, I think we should have an initial pass of this like at the very beginning. And this should be like very simple. Like if you go to like Rust RS, I'm thinking like there's a one-click instruction where like you go to a web page and it says like curl sh or download on Windows, and that's it. So there's no self-updating. There's no like trying to fancy move things around. It's just simple. Like let's just let's have one location that will get everyone a precompiled binary to your machine, and then we're in charge of distribution and like compiling, and no one else has to worry about that. It's kind of faster to install because it's
I really like that idea. I like it so much. I think that we should like prioritize. I mean, especially after my experience with cargo generate and that libgit2
It's one of those where
this
like
doesn't just slow down beginners on Windows. This can like screw over like everyone. So
yeah. So having
yeah.
it's one of those like it's really nice with Rust because it's a precompiled language, so we have the option to do this. And anyway.
And we're already making the binaries. And thank you for fixing the app fair stuff, by the way.
Yeah, of course. It's actually not entirely fixed, but
Oh,
I was
really?
actually working on this yesterday, the installers, and there's a lot of other stuff. But I'll get around to it. If
Anyways.
you're interested in this, like I'll be taking care of this. Like this is something I'm personally very interested in.
Okay, that's awesome. I would love to like follow along on what you do, so I can also help out with it. But that sounds really great. Yeah, it would also be nice with this installer thing. The update story for cargo installed anything is kind of garbage. And so if we had an installer that like if you want to install the latest version, just does the uninstall and reinstall thing for you, that would be nice. Because so many people are like, how do I update? And I'm like, you're not wrong.
And like in the long run, we could make this more Rust up, like where that whole thing is mostly taken care of. But I don't want to go too much on that tangent here.
This reminds me also of two related issues, which are the output of Wasm-pack. So I don't know if folks saw the little mini RFC I wrote about how to do progressive enhancement of the output. I think that's something we should land for this cycle. And then relatedly, I don't know if you filed an issue about this, Alex, or if it was just like chat in IRC or something, but like
The MSys bug?
Not the MSys bug. So I view that as part of the progressive enhancement.
Oh, okay.
But the kind of deciding which steps that will print out that we're doing.
Oh, there is an issue.
Having an idea, yeah, about like we're not going to print anything if it always takes like less than a second. Like it's just not worth printing. Do those sound like things that we should be tackling for the sprint?
I think I'm down with that. Of all the things that we've just listed, and just noting that we've listed a lot of things, and 6 weeks is long, but only 6 weeks, deciding what to print and what not to print doesn't seem as important to me as the other things. Like, I don't think the fact that we say like created a package JSON, even though it took less than a second, is like really ruining anyone's day. And like it does have a nice element of self-documenting what the tool actually does. So it has like a small benefit and doesn't seem to have huge negatives. I think in the long run, it's a really nice improvement. And like, I think that's positive. But prioritization wise, like if we wanted to focus on the output of Wasm-pack, I'd be much more interested in dealing with the progressive enhancement and also a couple of the other issues that Alex filed about getting the cargo build output that's up in there and making sure that it's like highlighted and stuff correctly. Like I think that that's more important than coming up with like an algorithm to figure out if something took long enough to show. Like I would much prefer like just making the output more robust and useful.
Agreed.
That's just my 2 cents.
That's convincing to me. So I added the progressive enhancement and the subcommand output cargo build in particular.
Yeah. One thing progressive enhancement, I do want to say, like, I like that we are going to work on implementing at least like some checks and catches in Wasm-pack, but I had a pretty good conversation with Killer Cup, who is the lead of the CLI working group. And so all of the tools that I built Wasm-pack with were specifically the tools that Killer Cup said that he was going to be building and working on in the CLI working group. And so I'm not saying that we shouldn't do it, but I would love to work closely with that team because to a certain extent, I'd love to say this is not really our problem and just have the working group build tools that do these things for us. Because it seems quite squarely like in their wheelhouse and something that they care about and want to do. Like, I know that's true. Like when I told Killer Cup about the MSys bug, he was like, you need to fix this right away because it's literally in the book and I expect this to work. So like, there is like a whole set of folks that really want to make that stuff happen. And so we can do the work in Wasm-pack, but I also think a lot of work can be done on indicative. And it turns out almost all of this work actually happens in the underlying crate console. And the more work that console can do, like, I think the better it is for both us and just all CLI applications in Rust everywhere.
Agreed.
That's like
So,
my one thing there is like, we should tag in some help.
yeah, I'd like to yes and that,
Totally.
which is like we should still make it one of our goals that like this is fixed in Wasm-pack, and then like if we can get that like the implementation of that completely in upstream crates, that's like super awesome, right? Like that's the win-win situation.
I'm completely in agreement with you on that.
Are we ready to move on to the book?
I have one point here because it might be not so much related to this, but it combines both Wasm-pack and Wasm-bindgen. So initially we had some plans like pick out some JavaScript libraries and reach out to others and then surgically insert Wasm into it and increase the performance and showcase this kind of stuff. Do we have to kickstart this in the current sprint, or what do you guys think? Like we can wait till the end of the sprint and then we'll start it? Because I feel like if we kickstarting that in the current sprint, then we can have some time and we can study through and then we can make progress in that, and that will really help us in the final sprint.
I agree totally that like real life experience about what's working and what's not working is like the best way to inform what we're doing. I'm not sure that it makes sense to like make that an explicit task that the working group is doing. I don't know, maybe that's not right though. Like I don't know if it makes sense for us to say like, okay, like we're choosing this NPM package and like let's introduce Rust and Wasm in it. Like I do really want to encourage everyone to like to have those projects or like help those projects, but like I just don't know if it makes sense to like bless a particular project as a working group.
So I could be wrong about this, but I think Sandil is referring to something that I talked about maybe like 5,000 meetings ago or something, where it's not that we're necessarily blessing, but sometimes if you want examples, you have to like go seek them out. And so like, I think for example, one of the things might be, I know at some point there was like a conversation of having some Webpack processes in Wasm. I'm thinking of a conversation I had with like Sean a long time ago. But like finding people who have packages that like we both think would benefit from like, you know, replacing some of the code in Wasm, and that the maintainers are like excited and interested in doing it. Like it's mostly like, let's maybe try and find some partnerships and just like seek out like, are there library authors who are interested in doing this and maybe want help? And then like getting a set of them and then like helping work through that. And like we help them, and in exchange they write about their experience or something like that, like in a marketing way. And I actually think that that's a really good idea. And I agree with Sandil that it would be better to start that now because email tag takes like 6 weeks. And so maybe after 6 weeks, we'd have like 3 people or 3 core teams or whatever that would be interested in doing this for our like polish QA cycle after this one. I could be, I don't know. I hope that made sense, Sandil, with what you were saying.
Yeah, it's somewhat similar to that. Like it matches whatever I wanted to do with it. Like it gives an advertising ground for us also. And on the other hand, it also helps us in order to showcase the capabilities and things like that, which is probably the same. Because I've gone through a library called React in Go. Like they are trying to make sure converting the entire React in Go, and they're trying to do Go-based React or something. So there are people who are trying actually this kind of stuff, and I think like we also should start doing that. And we have did that in Webpack. So Webpack GSOC student was doing implementing in Rust, and he has some issues, and I think we have to reach out to them and then ask like what is their problem, and probably we can, if we can help them out, we can help them out. And we also have to clearly tell people, if you guys want to do this, if you guys want to try this, we are there to help you guys, and we can make this happen, things like that, which will really help people and also will help us on the other hand too.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, maybe this is just something like a set of tweets that we all promote that's like, do you think your JavaScript library would benefit from WebAssembly? If so, like, know that we're here to like help you do that. Like, if you're feeling lost or something, like, please reach out. Like, we want to help.
Yeah, this sounds like a blog post to me, like something that we can really like point to and have all of the, you know, like an issue or something, like comment here and like we'll help you, etc. All right, I'll just put that at the top so it doesn't get lost. All right. For the book, the big thing that I have in mind is adding tests to the Game of Life tutorial and having that use Wasm-pack test and therefore Wasm-bindgen test and everything.
I have one thing for the book I'd like to see fixed, maybe. I don't know if there are currently plans for it. I'll be honest, I have not looked at the issues on the book, but in recommending the book to some of the Moz DevRel folks, the last chapter of the Game of Life tutorial about like getting it running, or I think it's like some Python like Nginx stuff, I would really love to replace that with anything else.
Yeah, that was kind of like someone came in and they were like, I need to know how to push this to production. And then like, it looked okay. And so we took it.
Yeah, I think it's fine. I think it's just a very, very specific solution. And so I would love to find, like, I think we still should have that chapter, but a chapter that does more, that's like you can deploy your app the way you would deploy any other type of web app. Like, one of the things you might want to do is start a local server or run a server on a remote computer, and like link out to how to do that, because the solution is a specific solution to a more general problem that also has nothing to do with what we build. And so when I think of like tech debt in docs, like, we should not maintain documentation for something that we don't maintain. So I would love to just like find some good tutorials. Like, if you don't know how to deploy a web application, that's chill, but there's plenty of books out there on how to deploy a web application that I think we should just shell out to instead of having the text in there. Because I think it makes people, like, my initial reaction on seeing that in the book was, do I have to do something special? And the answer is no. You don't have to do anything special to deploy an application that has some WebAssembly in it. And so I think we might be hurting ourselves there, because it being a special chapter that doesn't say like it's fine, I think makes people think that they have to do something unique or special, and that's just really not the case.
Yeah, that hard agree.
All right.
Yeah, I think Wasm-bindgen has a pull request open now that's very similar to how we ended up getting this chapter, where like it seems like someone has questions about how to deploy and do production, and then they figure out specifically the tool chain that they want to deploy, and then provide that as documentation for everyone else, which is nice of them and useful, but also suffers like everything that you just enumerated.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I do think we spent a lot of time in our documentation addressing JavaScript audiences. And I do think the chapter still should exist, because I really think that that chapter exists for people who are not coming from JavaScript, from the Rust people moving to the web stuff, or even C++ folks. And so I do think it's like a gap in knowledge for people who aren't classic web developers, so like how to do that. So I like totally get where it's coming from. But yeah, I'm sure we can find a good set of things. DigitalOcean's got really good docs on basically every way to do this, so maybe we use them. I'm down for whatever.
Another thing that I just remembered that I would like to have cleaned up is like currently there's a lot of like essentially reference material in the Game of Life tutorial that should be split out into actual reference material, like how to profile a Rust and Wasm application. And like that's all embedded in the tutorial right now, but there's no reason it needs to be. And so we should split that out, and then the tutorial should just like, you know, have only the specifics of profiling the Game of Life tutorial, and then just reference the reference material for like how to do that.
And the reference would live in that same book, right?
Yeah, it would just
awesome.
Be in the reference section just down below, and it would.
Yeah, I think that sounds great. I think it's also good because that will give the book like a little more like return value. Like, I know that I always like tutorials are great, but using a tutorial as a reference can be a huge pain in the butt because there's like all this text you don't need anymore. So I like that.
Let me pop up the book issues really quick because there's more stuff that I've had on my mind, but I can't remember it right now. Okay. So there's the unwinding section, I think would be nice to have. Next section. There's like, it would be nice to have a reference page about memory management, because that's something that you have to do, and we don't actually have any documentation anywhere talking about how you have to manually free Wasm-bindgen generated structs. And yeah, I think that's everything. I might have some note somewhere in my like actual paper journal about like I should file an issue of 4X. Anything else?
One thing I was thinking of doing for the Wasm-pack book, this is like incredibly superficial and not actually necessary, but might be nice. You can theme MD book, and since we have our little like Wasm Ferris character and some colors, we could like, you know, spice it up a little and make it just like look a little bit more branded to us. That could be like a polished thing, but could be nice.
Do we want to have the like minimal landing page, like Rust Wasm GitHub IO, turn that into a landing page, and then move the blog to like Rust Wasm GitHub IO /blog?
All right, this solves something I was going to bring up and then didn't know if it fit into the meeting. So recently, Mozilla DevRel has been wanting to like do some promotion of Rust WebAssembly work, and I was asked for a whole bunch of information, and so I drafted up this email that has like a ton of stuff in it, and the email seems useful, but I didn't know where it should live, and I wonder if some structure that's like big, it like talks about like what are all the resources we have and like what audiences are they good for, and like what's the current state of the tool chain, just like a link aggregator with like a little bit of context around each. I really do think I'd like to see that happen. I think that would be really nice. And people seem to find that email very useful, so I can only assume that other people will too. And everybody who wants to evangelize this workflow, is not going to always email us about it. So it might be nice to have like a page that like really makes it clear about what we like talking about and what the current state of things is, and any materials we have available for folks.
Is that the same as the landing page, you think? Or
Yeah,
is that
I would assume that the
part of
landing
it?
page, like the landing page would benefit from like that same set of stuff, I think.
Okay. I'm going to put this under the website issue.
That makes sense.
Good. Um, okay. All right. Bundlers and templates. Sundil, do you have any ideas for where to move for the next 6 weeks?
Yes, and we currently only have Webpack support. I think we have to move to the other bundlers too, and probably I will spend some time on this. We already have something from parcel team, I guess, but their pull request which Sven has opened for integrating WebAssembly support is still open there. So basically, I think most of the things we cannot do unless otherwise the bundlers are integrating that stuff. But probably with whatever we have currently, like Parcel has some support to Wasm currently, so we'll try to add those things inside there.
A
So
great
that's the
starting
first
off
thing.
point for that would be an issue that FitzGen opened on Wasm-pack and assigned himself. So I'm sure that he would be happy if you took it over, Sindil, which is, so I spoke with the Parcel folks, and Parcel says that like out of the box, like the Wasm-pack workflow should work with Parcel. And so what we really just need is a tutorial that explains how to do it with just like an example. To either one, show that yes, it works and document it, or like two, if we run into problems, then we can like tell them. Cause like right now, I think they're like, we have this and you need to try it out and tell us what you think first. And we just haven't done it. So we should.
Yes, of course, yes. And there are also like other bundlers are there. We'll try to integrate them and then give it to them and ask suggestions from them probably. But that's what I had in my mind. And the template section, we also have to revamp that stuff because the CI is not perfectly integrated. I'm just waiting for Wasm-pack's next release. Once that is there, then we can add in the CI, the C thing, and all those stuffs can be done. So that's pretty much of it, what I have plans for the next 6 weeks.
One thing I do know that I want to do for the Create Wasm app template is right now Create Wasm app defaults to using Webpack and generates a bunch of Webpack stuff for you. However, once we demonstrate that the Parcel stuff works, or if we add any other bundler support, I'd really like Create Wasm app to take an argument of which bundler you want to use and have it scaffold the right thing for you.
Yes, I also had a point regarding this. Thanks for reminding me that, Ashley. So one thing we can do is we can use Yeoman generators.
Use which? Sorry?
Use Yeoman generators.
Ah.
And generate our application, and we can ask set of questions to the users, like whether you want to use Webpack, whether you want to use TypeScript and things like that, and we can use that information and create application. Probably I can try to make a demo project or something like that, and then we will integrate all those templates into a single location and make sure that we're evolving that.
Cool. The only reason I don't usually reach for Yeoman is I just like wasn't really sure how many people use it these days.
I think a lot of people a lot of people are using.
Cool.
Okay.
I've been out of front-end JS shenanigans
Okay.
for a real long time, so I trust you on that.
Okay, we do have a bigger generator for full stack application generation, which is completely based on Yeoman, and it's kind of people are using it. So yeah, it's good as long as it's good.
Cool. I mean, as many entry points as we can make. That sounds awesome. And Yeoman really is designed to do this.
Yes.
Whereas npm init stuff does work, but does not come with a ton of features.
All right. Is that everything as far as bundlers and the templates go? Yeah?
Yeah.
Right. And I suppose if Sven comes up with more ideas, we can always add more.
This
Yeah,
is kind of a
sure.
hybrid one, but I know that it's something that needs to get done, and I am in the process. But we need to make sure all of our documentation uses the templates we have and addresses them. The Wasm-pack doc still needs that, and so.
Okay.
And I assume as we land more templates and things, we might need to update documentation.
Yeah.
Just more like a reminder than this is a brand new thing.
Mm-hmm. All right. As far as the testing story goes, I think we're with the Wasm-pack test PR, which should hopefully land today.
Yeah.
I think we're in a super, super good place. The one thing that I would like to add is right now, in the command, you specify if you want to use Firefox or Chrome or some headless browser, or if you want to use Node. And that is not supported as well at the actual Wasm-bindgen test level. It just will only work in one or the other. And there's no way of testing if a particular test is going to work in a headless browser or Node. And I think it would be nice if you try to run browser tests with a test that only works with Node, that we detect that and say nothing to do or whatever, right? Because I expect a lot of people will do test Node, test browsers, just especially if there's one suite that's for Node and one suite that's for browsers or whatever. Just having that work correctly.
Yeah. Knowing JS folks too, they'll probably want to try and make them the same code base, the same set of tests with a bunch of ifs in there. This just reminds me that the thing that we have a meeting for tomorrow, if I saw my calendar correctly.
Yeah.
This how to build stuff for Node and browsers at the same time, happily together. That story, I feel like that story. Yeah, I guess we need to decide if we want to get that done before the edition or if that's the first thing we do after. As I said in the last meeting, I can definitely do the naive, just go twice, make one for each, and that's fine. So we can have a start. But yeah, I mean, it does seem to be a very common use case for folks.
Yeah. So I added an issue for that to the Wasm-pack, or a little sub-item to the Wasm-pack bullet point. I think that's something we should figure out. And I think
that also might have interactions with Wasm-bindgen, depending on how we end up wanting to do it.
Yeah. It's here, whether or not it's under the right bullet point.
Totally.
We'll figure that out tomorrow in that meeting. And then kind of also related, again, the book section about testing. I don't really think there's anything else as far as testing goes. Don't really think there's anything to be done with debugging. Again, that's it's just not in a place that's ready yet. And so console error panic cook is the best thing that we can do at this moment.
One thing we might do for debugging, which maybe it fits under the book, I don't know, but I know that Wasm debuggers in browsers are getting nicer. And so maybe instead of owning, yeah, I know. I'm trying to be positive. Anyways, we might just try and talk about or link to that progress in the book to be this is what these browsers are doing for debugging. Might be useful. I don't know.
Yeah, if there is a place that we can link to, I agree. I don't know if there is like a place that is aggregating all of this progress. I think it's like a few different PRs and like the mostly inactive subcharter for debugging.
Yeah, I guess what I was thinking of was like reaching out to the browser dev tools teams of the major 3 browsers. Like I know the person working on this type of stuff at Mozilla, and like if a place doesn't exist, it might be like a great way to be like, hey, by 6 weeks from now, can you please have a blog post on this? Could be good.
Yeah, like or like link to meta issues and like
Yeah.
Aggregate status pages and blog posts and subcharter. Yeah, that would work really well in the debugging reference page that we pull out of the tutorial.
Yeah, exactly. I think that sounds good.
Yeah.
Because I mean, to be honest, like a lot of that work is like work that we just have no control over, but it is stuff that we know people care about. So instead of just going nothing, maybe give them something.
Yeah. Once they actually start supporting debugging, we are going to have a lot of work cut out for us. I don't think it makes sense to do any of that work yet, but like, so it's going to be dwarf based, and we modify binaries right now, which invalidates the dwarf because the dwarf is going to point to offsets that aren't at that offset anymore. And like fixing that in Wasm-bindgen and like in Binarian and Wasm-opt, like the whole tool chain is going to have to read in debugging information and then like preserve it and update it and like spit it out again.
Weren't we talking about making a Wasm-bindgen Wasm target for cargo build?
Wasm-bindgen.
Yes. And wouldn't that help with some of this so that we like don't have to edit the binary generated, that we just like make the right binary from the beginning? No.
Well, it depends
like,
where
no, okay.
If you consider the beginning after like you run cargo build, then yes.
But yeah, like, no. Okay.
That problem will just exist earlier. Yeah.
Fair. It's good to know this is coming.
Yeah,
this one's going to be a hard one to fix.
Yeah. And yeah, I don't know, maybe like, so even like the dwarf crate for, like the Rust crate for doing dwarf stuff doesn't support writing dwarf yet. You can blame that good for nothing author of the crate, which is me. So yeah, maybe it makes sense for me to like start adding that now.
Alex.
I mean, until browsers actually support it, or like anyone reads in this information in like sort of a first-class fashion, I would say no. Let's not worry about this. It's a worry, just a worry down the road, and like we have more important stuff to take care of in the meantime.
Yeah,
we did just make a very long list of stuff we're supposed to get done in the next 6 weeks, so I feel like we got a fair amount of stuff to do.
And so getting back to the list, I think this list is looking pretty complete. I guess the last item is like more website stuff. We just did a bunch of like content overhaul and basically matched what the working group, the embedded working group page looks like, which has been kind of the one that's pioneering the domain working group pages. Do we have more goals for that? Like anything we want to call out for this cycle other than just like make sure it's good enough for everything?
Yeah, I think just continuing to collect cool stuff and like making sure that we have lots of cool stuff to show off. So like one thing that is true, and I know why it's like this because we kind of started it without really fully understanding that it would get so long, but that like amazing like weekly list that we have, it might be worth like someone or all of us creating a spreadsheet and just like making an entry for each thing and like tagging it with a category so that we can like actually use that information in the future without having to like scroll through 500 comments. Because like that's like our like content library right there, like all of the cool stuff, and just having it like an actual library, like indexed and searchable and stuff, I think would be really useful. And I know that a lot of people would really care about that. So one thing, I guess we could do that, or I realized that today, the embedded working group, somebody I guess started, you know, those like awesome lists that people make about programming stuff?
Yeah.
Apparently somebody had made like an awesome Rust embedded list. And so that was absorbed by the working group. And so potentially if we wanted to like take that weekly list that we have and like turn it into something like an awesome list, then one of the positives there is that one, a lot of people will go to see the awesome stuff, but two, we might get some incoming stuff. So we're doing less of the outgoing search and people are coming to us. So that's like potentially another thing. And we can still like categorize stuff and do that. It won't be a spreadsheet, but like all lit.
I see some of that is like in the book with like crates you should know and like tools you should know, where like I've been trying to keep that very curated to just like the things that like you really should know if you're going to be doing this. But like it might make sense to take this list and make it like a chapter of the book or something, if that's the right place. Or maybe this like landing page that we're going to make is the right place.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I agree. Like having a
this like structure of like awesome lists. Like I am not terribly familiar with the culture, but I am familiar with the fact that throughout the tech industry, there's like a huge culture around these like awesome lists thing. Like people go like seeking them out, and like them just being a README with a big bulleted list of stuff seems to be what people like. Like that, it has become like its own structured, like meme is probably not the right word, but like there's like an awesome list for like everything. So we might not really even need to do anything fancy besides like you could make a PR and add your thing to the right category in the README on the list. And we could like repurpose it and dump it out on a website or link to it or something. But I don't know, people do really like, I don't know, I used to create a list in a README of just every conference talk I watched in the morning. And people friggin' love that stuff. They love it. I don't know why. I would never use it, but lots of people do. So maybe we should consider it.
People with more time than I have.
Maybe that's it. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. I think that's a great idea. I also think we are 20 minutes over time for this meeting, and I think this list is pretty complete. So unless anyone has like anything that can't wait till next week or can't be discussed on IRC or in GitHub issues, we should adjourn. Yep.
Sounds good to me.
All right. Thanks so much, everyone, for going through this list.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye. See you next week.
Bye.